an honor to be here today. We want to welcome everybody. This beautiful land with the beautiful people, the native people say, we come together with one mind and one heart. We honor all those that came before and all those that will come after. The native people also say we are in a time of prophecy on the earth. A time that they could foresee would be a time of great change. It is our responsibility here to stay in our hearts as we walk on our Mother Earth. Everything we think, do, and say has an effect on our Mother. We are here at this time to heal not only each other, but all that surrounds us, because everything is living and we are all related. Our thoughts are very powerful. And so we forgive all that has come before. We ask that they forgive themselves. We forgive anybody that we've hurt, and we forgive ourselves. Mother, Father, Creator, Ancient Ones, Spirits of this land, thank you for my life today. Thank you for the life of each and every person that's here and their extended families. We ask to open our hearts. We ask to walk in perfect alignment with you, Creator, to receive your blessings. We ask for the world to come together in peace, in love, and in harmony. We ask forgiveness from you, Mother Earth, for any harm we've done to you. We give you love. We offer you love. We offer you healing. We pray for you, Grandmother. We offer love and beauty and healing to all of your waters that keep us purified, keep us in love. We pray for the 8-leggeds, the 6-leggeds, the 4-leggeds, and especially the 2-leggeds at this time to come together with one heart as a people. Aho.
Aho.
Thank you for coming. I'd also like to thank a couple of people, an anonymous donor, 2 families in town, Pat and Jerry Blakey, for hosting some artists who are going to be performing in the church sanctuary this afternoon. Richard and Barbara Walkowitz for hosting artists, players, acting who are going to come performing in the church sanctuary at 3 o'clock. Please come. It's going to be a really fantastic play. I have to say that because I'm in it. I also want to thank 2 very significant organizations here in town. the United Church of Christ for what they have contributed, all their space, all their facilities to us to come together in food and in storytelling. And the Cornwall Historical Society is really so graciously put on an exhibit including Major Ridge's peace pipe. Not only the history of the exhibit, but here's an artifact that came here. It resides with the Gold family, and somebody said, wouldn't that be lovely if it became part of the Historical Society collection? But the Gold family has this incredible ridge pipe that came for one of the weddings to bring peace, as Kathleen has done here. Keep us in our hearts. So I want to say that it's the exhibit, but it's also the colloquium that the Historical Society is going to be presenting tomorrow afternoon, 2 to 5. I don't think you want to miss any of these things. We have Dr. Lucien Levin, who's going to be speaking this afternoon at the town hall. And thank you all for coming. Welcome. Thank you for coming to honor our ancestors. They came here to better themselves and to better their world. We're standing on their shoulders, continuing their struggles and their dreams, building on their accomplishments. Many of us have come a very long way to heal old wounds. It has taken generations, but here we are, and it is a good time to take our place. The story begins much further back than I can tell, but back to the aristocratic feudal control of land in Europe, where Christians persecuted one another and people sought escape and opportunity in the New World, a continent already inhabited. Our story begins with Captain Cook's discovery of the Sandwich Islands, better known as the Hawaiian Islands. Following the U.S. Revolution, Yankee merchants financed a business killing whales for oil, chartered ships for the China trade, where Hawaii was used as a port of call. In 1807, a young Hawaiian, Henry Obakaya, sailed for America via China and arrived 3 years later at the gates of Yale University, crying for a want of a Christian education. 200 years ago, influential New England ministers, and it really does read like a who's who of the influential, the intelligentsia of that time. New England ministers saw this need and founded the Foreign Mission School in a remote town of Cornwall where, quote, the exceptional character of the young people and the location apart from the temptations and distractions of the world served their purposes. In the first year, 1817, the school enrolled 7 Hawaiians, 3 Asians, 2 Anglo-Americans to become missionaries and who were provided a remarkable education in penmanship, grammar, arithmetic. One student wrote to his father that he had memorized 87 questions in the Westminster Catechism. More advanced students had lessons in Greek, Latin, rhetoric, navigation, surveying, astronomy, theology. Chemistry and ecclesiastical history were later added. One student, Elias Boutnot, calculated a lunar eclipse. I don't think any of our high school students or college students could do that, personally. Remarkable education. They cultivated 8 to 12 acres of corn, potatoes, and other crops, and at one point assembled 14 yoke of oxen to plow newly given land, quote, and prayer was offered before the work began. The boys toiled in the fields and forests 2 days a week and learned agriculture, horticulture, cooperage, and blacksmithing. Many found the tasks far too arduous. The boys slept above the academy, but they took their meals here in the steward's house known as the Commons. Public support for the school's mission was nearly universal, and praise for its students was magnanimous. One quote was, quote, on which praying hearts of thousands in Switzerland are fixed. The reach of the Foreign Mission School was worldwide. It was astounding. Listen. Another local woman said that when the students gave public exhibitions, quote, The Indian pupils appeared so genteel and graceful on stage that the white pupils appeared uncouth beside them. The Indians sang and prayed in their native tongue, and when they prayed, they knelt, clasped their hands together, and held them up. When they sang, they sat in a row, and all waved their hands simultaneously. End of quote. But then she continues. They were never allowed to go beyond a certain limit from the school, never into people's dwellings without an invitation, or sent for an errand from headquarters. When they embraced Christ as their Savior, they had a written permit to go 2 or 3 miles, as the permit stated, and talk with people and tell them what Christ had done for them. We always laid aside all our work when the scholars came. They talked and prayed from the heart. It would revive us, so solemn and yet so joyful. It was a great wonder to them why everyone in town were not Christians, when they had heard of Jesus all their lives. Gifts of land, clothing, tools, animals, a load of hay, barrels of cider, a sword, a trunk, gold epaulets from the Revolutionary soldier, a collection taken from the Farmington wedding, offerings from a Masonic lodge, cash from the factory children, 24 quill pens, a gold ring, cash from Princeton students, and also from the Salisbury Female Fragment Society poured in. From European aristocrats, high-ranking military officers, and commoners alike, from around the world and in many states, in silver florins and gold ducats, in U.S. dollars, from the founders, the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions, to the United Missionary Society of New York City, and from too many people to list here. The Secretary of War paid for many of the Indians' tuition and half their transportation costs. They were stuck here. Chief Justice of the U.S. and the Commissary of Prisoners under Washington, who was also President of Congress and the Director of the U.S. Mint, contributed. His name, Elias Boutenow. And he is the namesake of a young Cherokee, cousin of John Ridge. Nearly 100 students spoke 23 languages at the Foreign Mission School during a brief 9 years operation. Students were American, Bengalese, Chinese, Greek, Hawaiian, a Hindu, Javanese, Jews, Malays, Marquesans, a New Zealander, Portuguese, a Scot, and Tahitians. The Native Americans included Abenaki, Cherokee, Choctaw, Delaware, Iroquois, Mexican, Mohican, Narragansett, Ojibways, and in parentheses it says Chippewa or Chippeways, Omahas, Oneidas, Osages, Senecas, Stockbridges, Tuscaroras. Some students were extremely intelligent and others were dismissed for misconduct or incapacity. Notes of character are fascinating and can be read in Starr's History of Cornwall and other references at the library or the Historical Society nearby. Speaking of the thanks for the church and the Historical Society, yes, they need our support. Thank you. Several Foreign Mission School alumni should receive special attention here because of their significant contributions. I read that Henry Obokaya originated the Hawaiian alphabet and translated the Bible from Hebrew into Hawaiian and became a church member. Now, our church records are missing because of a fire, but apparently it was in Torringford that he was a church member. And he learned this also from Mills Jr., who up in Andover, where this all began, even though they don't say it in their history. It is from the Hebrew to the Hawaiian and became a church member. It is he who is responsible for a deep 200-year connection between the Congregational Church in Cornwall and the Hawaiian congregations. He was buried here, and the grave can be visited just up the hill. You can drive up to the first cemetery right nearby, and he was buried, and his grave can be visited just up the hill, though his remains have been returned to Hawaii. Perhaps Nick Bellantoni will give you a tour and tell us his story. Is Nick here? He will be there this afternoon. The second person who deserves note is John Ridge, and he stayed here. Perhaps you saw his room if you were lucky enough. And his great-great-great-granddaughter is staying there. It's pretty remarkable to me. John Ridge, son of a Cherokee, we call him chief. I've been corrected. He was only part of the council, but he was a chief of the council. That's very nearly the truth. And his cousin, Elias Boudinot, who have created the Cherokee Constitution before the state of Georgia had a constitution. Negotiated with President Jackson, and were party to a suit of Worcester versus Georgia, which was won in the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court. That verdict laid the foundation for the doctrine of tribal sovereignty. But when Ridge asked President Jackson to intercede, the old Indian fighter was reported to have said about justice, "John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it." Sounds like some presidents we know. This resulted in the forced dispossession, removal, and relocation of Cherokees and several other tribes off their sovereign and sacred lands to Oklahoma Territory. 1/4 of the people died en route because of cold, starvation, and disease. They were promised so much and given so little. Today, it is known as the Trail of Tears, and it began here in a love story that's an epic love story. Today, this Trail of Tears, with all those dyings, would be known as yet another genocide. I wonder why all the new European settlers who demanded land weren't offered Oklahoma Territory instead of Cherokee, sovereign nation. Two events adversely affected public opinion about the school. When Cherokees John Ridge and Elias Boudinot married local girl Sarah Northrup, Steward's daughter, it was common practice in the South, but caused outrage and burning of effigies on the village green right here in Cornwall. And I invite you to read more about it. See the performances and talk to other guests, actual descendants of these families who are here today. It is really a beautiful story that began right here in the Steward's house, which we are commemorating today as a National Historic Landmark, and we have representatives from the National Park Service, which is pretty remarkable to have this right over here on their plaque. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate this. I have been the steward here for 30 years, and it's time for me to retire and sell this wonderful house, but I am pleased this story is recognized as an important American history and has brought us together to celebrate and honor the Foreign Mission School, its illustrious founders, whose names read like the who's who of the early New England, its dedicated faculty, and all the generous contributors who were inspired by its mission. Most importantly, all the students who tried to live in the grace of God. Today, 200 years later, we are still facing injustices and discrimination based on race, and many of us have come a very long way, to heal old wounds. Here we are creating a new history, and like our ancestors, trying to make it better for those who follow. Thank you for coming. Help write a new chapter in our collective history by the way we live in this family.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all so much for coming today and for witnessing this incredible event and for joining us. My name is Mary Catherine Nagel. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, which is now located in Oklahoma, and I'm a descendant of John Ridge. So it's incredibly meaningful to come back and to stand on I don't know if this stone was actually here. Probably not, right? There was probably a different stone here. But anyways, the point is this home was here. And if this home hadn't existed, if this school hadn't existed, I wouldn't exist. We are here because of all the ancestors who breathed life into each generation that got us here, right? And a lot of times in Cherokee culture, we'll think about the 7 generations before, as well as the 7 generations to come. Because like the opening blessing, you know, we always think about what are we leaving behind for the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation. Well, I know that my grandfathers, Major Ridge and John Ridge, were thinking of that. And John Ridge was thinking of that when he came here. And I am the 7th generation from Major Ridge, the 6th generation from John Ridge. And I'd like to recognize my father, Michael Nagel, who is here, also a descendant of John Ridge. And my cousin Ridge and his daughter Aubrey, who are also descendants of John Ridge. You know, there's a lot that can be said, and if you have met me before, you know that I'm happy to talk. And I certainly don't want to keep us all here too long. I know we have a lot of other events planned for today. I hope you all can attend the play at 3 o'clock. We will be doing a reading of a short play that I wrote here in the UCC parish. That's 3 p.m. today. And we have several very talented actors who have traveled here from New York City to participate in the play, as well as your own star from Cornwall, Benjamin Silliman Gray, who will be starring in the play. This is just the stepping stone for his next debut on Broadway. He doesn't even realize I'm talking about it. So, yeah, but you know, I'd like to say I'm a playwright. I'm also an attorney. It was very impactful for me growing up when my grandmother, my father's mother, who is no longer with us today, but today she's buried in that cemetery in Cherokee Nation, the Polson Ridge Cemetery. It's the northeastern edge of Cherokee Nation today. Major Ridge and John Ridge are buried there. It's just about 150, 200 yards from where John Ridge was assassinated on June 22nd, 1839, when fellow Cherokee ran into his home in Cherokee Nation. He was in bed next to Sarah Bird Northrup. At that point, they'd been married for 15 years. They had several children, and small children. The oldest was 12 at the time, and the youngest was just a baby. And my grandmother's grandmother was Flora, and she was 4 years old at the time. They dragged John Ridge out of his bed and stabbed him to death repeatedly in the front yard in front of his wife and children. And they did that because he signed the Treaty of New Echota. And that was a treaty that he signed, and that Elias Boudinot signed, and actually a couple other of our family members signed, because they had come to believe at that point in time the only way Cherokee Nation would continue to exist would be that if Cherokee Nation agreed to move. And that way, if Cherokee Nation left their ancestral homelands, the homes that they had known for thousands of years, and the land that Creator put them on to protect, that was a very special relationship with that land that Creator designed. Cherokee, we have a creation story, and you know, probably like most cultures have a creation story, right? And Cherokees believe that we were put on those mountains there to protect them. So how could we leave them? And there were a lot of Cherokees that believed, even if we're killed, we should never leave these lands. But our grandfathers believed we have to leave them to preserve the sovereignty of our nation, so that 7 generations from now, we will still have a Cherokee Nation. And I invite you all to come to Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma for Labor Day weekend. It is our annual reunion, our holiday, and it's always emotional for me to see that holiday, because there are thousands of Cherokees today. And as I watch the dancers at the powwow, or the chief, Bill John Baker, give his speech at the State of the Union, or we have a parade, and I just think, we're still here. And that's why my grandfathers signed that treaty. They wanted 7 generations from them for Cherokees to still be here. And we are. We might not be in our ancestral homeland, and actually there are a few, the Eastern Band Cherokee, who hid out and did survive there. But we are still here, and it's a huge honor to be back here in Cornwall, where I wouldn't exist today. And as Ben mentioned, Ben and Amy have been so gracious to welcome me back into this home, and I've gotten to sleep in that room up there where John Ridge slept, and where Sarah Bird Northrup brought him soup and love, and basically nursed him back to health. And to sleep in that room is pretty amazing. I also want to say, so this is a long story, but growing up, my grandmother would always tell the story of Worcester v. Georgia, and how at a time when the president and Congress wanted to exterminate our people, it was the Supreme Court that recognized our right to exist and said, no, Cherokee Nation is the only sovereign that gets to exercise jurisdiction on its lands. Cherokee Nation has the inherent right to exist. So my grandmother really taught me to have a deep respect for the court. And John Ridge was one of the first Native attorneys in the history of the United States. So I went to law school and I became an attorney, and I've spent my life working as an attorney, but I've also seen, we have a lot of obstacles in the Supreme Court and in federal courts, and I've seen the power of storytelling and how that can really change things. And so I also became a playwright. And I just want to recognize someone here who's in the back, my dear friend Seema, who everyone should thank. She's from Arena Stage in Washington, D.C., and they will be producing my play Sovereignty in January of 2018 in Washington, D.C.
I'm going.
Yes. We would love for as many people from Cornwall or our relatives from Hawaii, Henry Ukubaya's family, or any of the other descendants who may be here that I have not recognized, other descendants from the students of this school or anyone from Cornwall, to please come and join us. There are a few scenes in the play that take place in Cornwall. I came here first. Arena Stage commissioned me to write the play, which if you're a playwright, that's such a huge blessing to get. It's like basically like, here's some money, and I was like, but I haven't written the play yet. And they're like, right, here's some money, go write the play. And I was like, well, what if you don't like it? Here's some money, go write the play. I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write a play about my grandfather's story. I have to go to Cornwall. I'd never been. And I came here and I met Ben and Amy thanks to Ann Schillinger, who's right here. So Ann connected me to Ben and Amy, and they said, well, why don't we take you to see the room where John Ridge met Sarah Bird Northrup? And I was like, what? So I walk into that room, and of course immediately I'm like, this is one of the first scenes of the play. And you'll see that scene in the play today, but it's also in Sovereignty. And just such a blessing to be able to come back here where, as Ben mentioned, so much of the story starts here. And I think by gathering here today, we're recognizing that the story isn't finished. The story continues. And as Kathleen mentioned, we come to heal. We know some of the things that happened here were, there was anger, there was hatred expressed, there was also a lot of love. And I think we've all come back today out of that love. And so we come with forgiveness in our hearts, and we come to heal, and we come to remember, and we come to continue. So thank you so much for welcoming me and my family and my dear friends and my relatives here today. And one slight note, due to some complications, our lunch is on its way. It's going to be a little late. So we had said lunch will be served for everyone at noon at the parish hall right here at this church. It's actually going to be more like 12:30, which is fine because I just talked for a really long time. So, so just so you know, lunch will now be at 12:30. And so without further ado, one of the many blessings of being invited back to Cornwall has been to meet the descendants of the other students at the school. And I got to meet Kawanoi through Ben and Amy, my adoptive parents now. And it's been an incredible journey, and I was very blessed to be welcomed to come to Hawaii this last March and meet Kawanoi's father, who really looks like Henry Ukubaya. and to share in that, because although John Ridge and Henry were not here at the same time, Henry passed away in February of 1818. John Ridge did not come here until the fall of 1818. Their time here has impacted our lives and how we've carried forward in so many different ways. And so it's a huge honor and a blessing to be here this weekend and have descendants of not only John Ridge but also Henry Ukubaya here. So I just want to thank Kawanoi and welcome her up to the stone step.
Aloha mai kako, ka'ua noe ho'omanawa nui. Seventh generation, once removed, descendant from Henry Pukaia. As I try to prevent the tears of joy from rolling down my eyes, as our ancestors had tears of relief as he was discovered in his tears. We are so blessed to be here today as we were 200 years ago. And the same family in the same time, and now we're in a different space and time with the same family in the same time. So it's been a long journey coming here today and experiencing the works of our ancestors and taking it upon ourselves as individuals today and applying it how we evolve as our peoples here on earth. And so the beginning and the end of our journey here will not end at all, or begin, or the one of the rather. And so as we learn to grow in all these things and all the works and teaching and sharing our different stories, we'll be discussing throughout the weekend, it was a lot. And my journey here came from my descendant from the Mayflower in England. So I was cruising around New England, and I was like, yeah, I'll go check out my ancestor in Cornwall, not expecting to meet the Grays and be re-invited to a family that I knew was here, but we didn't know it was here. Just like Henry knew something was here for him, but he didn't know. So when he had left home, he knew he wasn't going to come back, and he knew that what he was going to do was going to impact us all the way till today. So I'm here in evidence that from the congregational churches, we talk a little bit about our history as our nations come together and finding our spirituality. And this place, not only was it educational, spiritual, mathematical, geometrical, it was everything that we have here on earth to endure. And so all of that to comprehend as a people today, as we're supposed to be so advanced, and we need to know everything now, immediately. And so we only can reflect on historical events and literacy and imagery that's been brought upon us through long distances of same imagery. So today, in branching off of the works of this school, we almost celebrate our 200th year of our Hawaii evangelical churches, where we had our priests of our culture unified with the missionaries as they came here. Our monarchy was going through a lot of turmoil at the time that Henry was here, and he took the faith upon himself outside the turmoil. His parents had been lost in a battle between our own families in the monarch, and this came on the paramount of King Kamehameha unifying all the islands. But they had to begin with our first island, the Big Island. And so in the long battles of our nation, we had lost Henry's family, and Henry's family is our family. So Henry's a child of us. I'm a descendant of the priests that took him in after his parents lost, that sought his well-being on behalf of the family. We tried to not let him go. We said, you don't know where you're going. Why are you going? He never listened. You know, a lot of times we don't listen because we're listening to something else, and that guides us beyond our own sight. But we're all here. It's the same people in the same time. So it's been really beautiful. But what his works have done has created me coming back and finding him again, and having perpetuated and known his perpetuation of the knowledge that he endured and sought for us. The turmoils in our monarch, as we're going through our own transitions in our leadership, we were waiting. We had abolished all our kapu system, which was a lot of our traditional practices. We had abolished them 6 months prior to the mission that was formulated from here, from Henry Pukaya's great ideas. We were ready for them on Hawaii. We had gathered ourselves and had prepared for something that we did not know what was going to happen. And it had happened. And we are all here together from one of the great beginnings. But in the islands, we have like an individual thought. We're by ourselves. There's nothing here. Nobody's going through what we're going through. And so coming across Mary Catherine, I said, wow, we understand the same things, and I've never met you before. We have the same character, the same drive that brought us here. And a lot of them never met each other before. But to find myself from the ancestors who came here earlier with the Mayflower, which is a whole nother journey that Cornwall has to endure in their history coming here, coming from that history and meeting myself as far as advanced is all the way to Hawaii with the same context. It has been an exciting journey, and we can all see that here today with a lot of the work. So as we come together, through this weekend. Let us learn all those things and grasp one another's stories about what's going on and what happened, because everyone has their own story, but it all becomes the history. And this will all reflect on the history that we'll be watching in 400 years when this is still here. I think, yeah. And so we were so blessed there's so much history. And we were so blessed. In our history, our King Kamoli'i from Kauai, which is an island that we're from as well, he had sent his son. He was more advanced. They always say it's a separate kingdom than Hawaii. Kamehameha it's all family, but Kamoli'i was a little bit more advanced, so he had sent his son before Kamehameha could send his son. So Kamoli'i came here, and he came back home, and he had finished the schooling there. And his great-grandnephew became the first congressman of, at the time it was the Hawaiian Kingdom. And it was Kalanianaole, or Jonah Kuhio, and he had wrote our Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, which now gives us a congressional identification of Hawaiians, or Kanaka Maoli. And so our congressional representative today is Tulsi Gabbard, and so we had reached out to her. She's a strong influence in our Hawaiian community as well, and so we had reached out to her to share this journey with us, as she's of Polynesian descent and supports our goals in our spirituality. And so today, a great journey has occurred based on faith as well. Our worldwide voyage of our navigational canoe comes home today. They're waiting outside on the shores. We're about 6 hours difference. They're waiting on the shores of Hawaii to come in for their entrance. Now, this thing is huge to the context of our culture. It proves that we have a culture that we cannot see, but we understand it. It is evident, and we use it in progressing and moving. And so this voyage has survived a completely creator-dependent completion of navigation around the world off of nothing but the navigational skills from above. And that completes today, and luckily we're 6 hours ahead because we can celebrate now. But our state has outreach to create a oli, or a welcoming chant and dance. And so they're all doing this vibrant thing, welcoming home something very huge. A lot of times we need evidence or material things to justify our growth. This is something that's invisible that justifies just enough, like a lot of things that happened here. And so I want to introduce, so Tulsi's there, and it's Father's Day weekend. Her father is there. He's an amazing guy too. So she's there. So we have another family member of ours as well, Katie Kamehameha, a representative staffer from her office. And Tulsi has something to present to the owners of the home. And I'd like to introduce Katie Kamehameha from Tulsi's office.
Hi.
And let her take it away.
Come up. This is for you guys, for the Stewart House. I'm just reading a message from Congresswoman Gabbard. As Kuanoi says, she represents the outer island, so everything except for Honolulu proper. So even where Henry grew up, if he had a congressional district at that time, we would be representing him. So a message from Congresswoman Gabbard in recognition of Cornwall Foreign Mission School bicentennial celebration. Mahalo nui loa to everyone gathered as we celebrate the 200th anniversary of the founding of the Cornwall Foreign Mission School, the first of its kind in the United States. Inspired by Hawaii's Henry Opunkahaia, the Cornwall Foreign Mission School brought together young scholars from around the world to live and learn together as missionaries in historic Cornwall, Connecticut, part of the traditional homeland of the Mohican people. Through its short yet prominent existence, Cornwall became more than 100 students from across the globe representing 24 different native languages and a wide variety of customs, traditions, and ideas. The students' education was focused on both their professional and personal development, along with studying astronomy, calculus, theology, geography, chemistry, navigation, various languages, and the young men worked in the fields, learned trades like blacksmithing, coppering, and attended regular church services. Though the school closed in 1826, its grand experiment as a place to foster community dialogue, develop respect for intercultural relationships, and provide understanding of our collective history from Connecticut to Hawaii continues to provide important lessons to each of us today. No matter where you are from, your ethnicity, your race, or anything else, we can come together with aloha, sincere, deep love and respect for other people as children of God. This ideology of inclusivism, I'm learning on that word, of aloha, of love and respect for others was a cornerstone at Cornwall, and it is still relevant and needed 200 years after its founding. We live in challenging times, but rather than pour fuel on the fire of darkness, divisiveness, and hatred, let us honor Cornwall Foreign Mission School's history by bringing the light found in the aloha spirit to our lives, our country, and the world. Today and always, let us truly live aloha in our actions, in our words, and in our hearts. With aloha, Tulsi Gabbard, Congresswoman. Thank you guys.
You won't get a good services. You're up.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's great to see you from this perspective. My name is Linda Cook, and I'm here on behalf of the National Park Service. And it's a great honor to be here this morning with all of you. Designations of National Historic Landmarks are monumental markings of American history across the country. There are over 2,000 National Historic Landmarks that serve as the anchors of the American experience. What happened here is just as important as what happened at the Statue of Liberty, the Adams Home, the Independence Hall, Washington, D.C. There is no ranking of National Historic Landmarks. Once you're in the club, you're good. So just as Mary Catherine mentioned words like protection, storytelling, future generations, these are the same words that we use when we talk about buildings just as important as the one that's behind me. When you look at this house, you know, I drove by and I thought, is that it? And then I realized, you know, when I saw the sign, things aren't always apparent from the outside. And so it takes knowing what went on inside to be able to share those stories. National Historic Landmarks need advocates. They may be protected, but they're only as good as the people that take it upon themselves to help protect these buildings and to advocate for them and to make sure they're kept with the integrity of what happened in history. To do this, you have to save them and you have to share them. Because when you share them, people feel involved. And as I look at you out there, I bet all of you are going to do that. And the National Park Service is always here to help, but it takes you to make it happen. Because the last thing you want is just a piece of paper from us, right? Thank you. Oh, and I'm supposed to introduce Dan.
Please.
Yes,
Please.
Okay.
And I'd like to introduce Dan. I was caught up in that piece of paper.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Dan Bolignani. I'm the director of the Upper Housatonic Valley National Heritage Area. It's a National Park Service program that serves the 29 communities here in the Upper Housatonic River Valley. So I am your local connection, your local liaison to the National Park Service. I have an office right here locally in Salisbury. I live in Lime Rock. So, and you may know our program from some of the many things that we support. Our regional trails program, the bikeways, the annual heritage walks, some of the thematic heritage trails. My door is always open if you have questions about what we do or how we might be able to help either a history project, a cultural project, or a natural resource project that fits within the National Park Service framework. I'm your local person for that. Just briefly, I want to say how pleased I am that we have in our region another National Historic Landmark. They are special places, as Linda said. They're a very, very rare breed and a very poignant example of the American story that has been brought to life. And so, as she said, it takes all of us to keep this alive here. And so I ask your support ongoing. And if I can help in any way with something you've got going locally here too, look me up. I'm right up the road. So thank you.
we have nothing more to say here that I know about, but thank you for coming, and this concludes our formal welcome. These flowers were shipped from Hawaii for this dedication by Deborah Lee. I'm not sure she is here. Debbie, thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, the National Park Service with the plaque, but there was somebody I forgot to thank, and that was, I'll just tell you a brief story. I was trying to mount this bronze plaque that came with 5-inch bolts, 4 or 5-inch bolts on the back. I had a new hammer drill, a new 1/2-inch masonry bit, carbide tip. It took me an hour to go 1 inch in that, and that's local Goshen granite. 1 hour, and I said, that's gonna be 2 days. I called Gary Heaney right down here, a neighbor that my kids went to school with his kids, and he's Cornwall Granite and Monument. He said, Ben, I'm down in New Milford. And he said, I gotta stop and see a friend and get a beer. And then he said, I got an appointment at 6. Are you gonna be around? I said, yes. He shows up, says, what do you got? I showed him the plaque. He brings his truck right out front. He says, I need power. And I said something, he said something else. And he says, I said something else. And he said, do you want to do it your way or my way? And I know when to stop. I believe in experience is the best teacher. Gary pulled his truck up right where that red car is, got the tailgate, pulled out a hammer drill that was a hammer drill. We powered up. In 35 minutes, he had 4 holes cut into the stone, very specialized epoxy, affixed, and then he strapped the sign plaque onto the stone, said, here's the remainder of the epoxy. When that's dry, you can take the strapping off. That's ready. So that should go until somebody alters the house, then the National Park Service will come with a nice big chop saw, and they'll cut that plaque off that stone if we don't take care of this house, right? So we would, having been 30 years as steward, I would love to see this preserved for all different kinds of purposes, but for the storytelling that goes on here in Cornwall. Cornwall Historical Society and the church, this is an essential story. This begins here. It's an epic American story. Thank you, Ann Schillinger. Thank you, Cornwall Historical Society. Jenny Potter is here. But thank you, Gary Heaney, for fixing the sign. The National Park Service for the sign as well. But the recognition came from somebody who is not here, a professor at Brown University. You bet.
Carolyn Frank.
Thank you. Dr. Frank, Carolyn Frank. She came here with her students.
The young brain.
Thank you. That's the young brain's mother over there. She went through the house with her students and did the documentation, which is extremely difficult to do, to jump through their hoops.
Yeah, we make everything difficult.
It's the government. It's our government. So anyway, thank you very much, Dr. Frank and the students. I'm sorry they're not here to participate in this grand affair. We've concluded this. Now, please join us for lunch. And then there's a talk by Dr. Lalan at the town hall at about 1 o'clock, shortly after lunch, or 1:15.
All right. Lunch will be at 12:30.
Okay,
Eat fast.
that's it.
And thank you.